Good evening. Come to the next topic called impact of various policies of financial market. Very easy topic. It will be mostly dealing with the RBI's monetary policy. And plus in this chapter, we are also going to see what is Federal Reserve policy. So RBI versus Federal Reserve of USA. And we are also going to cover some indexes or indices like consumer price index, wholesale price index, cost inflation index CII. So one paragraph of income tax also we will discuss. How to calculate capital gain tax using cost inflation index. Okay. But our major focus would be on the monetary policy of RBI. As a student of finance, as a student of this subject, one should know what are the various tools and techniques which RBI uses for managing the monetary policy or credit creation in the economy. Is it right? Direct chapter from your maybe 12th standard economics, you can say. In case if you have not kept it as an option in the 12th standard, now it is time to learn. So the first paragraph begins with credit policy of the RBI. What do you mean by credit policy of the RBI? So first we'll see the meaning of credit policy. First line, point A. Credit policy means a plan of action executed by RBI on behalf of Government of India. Underline, I have done it. A plan of action executed by RBI on behalf of the Government of India to control and regulate the demand for, control and also regulate the demand for money and supply of money with the public and the flow of credit, that is the money into the economy. So basically Government of India is the entity which has to ensure that economic growth takes place, and RBI is just an agency of the government. Although RBI assumes it is an independent agency, but government uses RBI as its agency to execute its plan of action. What are the plans? How much money should be with the people? This demonetization etc. is nothing but a plan of action executed by RBI on behalf of Government of India that has reduced the availability of money with the public, and then how much money should be flowing into the economy, that is how much credit should be given by the banks to the business houses. Through credit policy, RBI can affect the availability of money supply in the economy. It can increase the money supply, it can decrease the money supply. Does it affect the Indian economy if RBI affects the money supply? How does it affect? If money supply increases, advantage, more funds will be available with the companies, with the borrowers, with the household, so they will involve into more production and consumption activity. What is the benefit of more production and consumption? More demand will be created, more production, more employment, growth. But there is a disadvantage also there. More money supply may result into inflation. Because simultaneously the production must also increase. If you only hand over money in the hands of public but there is no corresponding increase in the production, then too much money will start chasing too few goods. And if too much money chases too few goods, price will rise. Is it right? So they have to maintain a balance. RBI has to walk a tightrope walk. They have to ensure that there is a growth also, employment also, price stability also, Okay, but these are contradictory sometimes. You can't achieve growth and price stability at the same time. So come to point number B. What is credit policy? It refers to the use of credit policy instruments. We will see this credit policy instrument after a few minutes, like repo, reverse repo, open market operations, CRR, SLR. Those are called credit policy instruments, which are at the disposal of the central bank. So in India, central bank has got so much of power. They will decide what should be CRR, what should be SLR, what should be repo rate, open market operations. So through these instruments, they can increase or reduce the availability of money supply to regulate the availability, cost and use of money and credit. So first feature of credit policy is that you can use it effectively for availability. How much money should be available? Cost means interest rate, and the use of money and credit, in which sector the credit should go, like agriculture sector. So they have special policies for that. That is, they come under priority sector. Bank have to disburse some proportion of their loan to agriculture sector. So they can even decide where the money should go. Credit policy can be used to promote economic growth. Properly, if you use it, you can increase the overall growth of the economy. Credit policy can be used for price stability. We will see all these terms again in the next few paragraphs in detail. Then credit policy can be used for optimum level of output and employment. Balance of payment equilibrium. You can increase or decrease the exports or imports through credit policy. Stable currency or any other goal of the government's economic policy. So these are the objectives of credit policy. Through credit policies, we can influence these variables. Now there is one important paragraph, tick. Objectives of credit policy. Objectives of credit policy. What are the objectives of credit policy of central bank? If they ask you write 5 objectives of credit policy, possible? 2 marks, 3 mark question. Then you can refer this page and write down the main headings. Maintenance of price stability. Actually, in India, RBI's main objective of credit policy is to ensure that there is no inflation, or inflation does not go to a very high numbers, because inflation affects masses. Somebody has said that inflation is an indirect tax on poor people. Inflation is a indirect. Just for the sake of saying, it's not actually you are paying any tax, but indirectly you are taxing poor people if you are having inflation in the economy, because they have to bear the burden of that inflation. So one of the foremost responsibility of RBI is to control the inflation and maintain the price stability. Okay. Second purpose is to achieve economic growth. Now these two are, you can see on the screen, there is a diagram. To balance it properly, growth and inflation has to be balanced properly. Too much emphasis on one will lead to fall of the other. Okay. So the primary objective of the RBI or central bank is to maintain a judicious balance between maintenance of price stability and achieving the economic growth. But if you try to focus too much on growth, inflation will go up. If you try to focus too much on price stability and curtailing the inflation, growth may come down. So therefore you have to maintain a balance, a judicious balance between the two. So achieving economic growth is not a direct objective. You have to maintain a balance between growth and price stability. GDP growth and job creation is primarily the government function. Why RBI and government sometimes have fight? Because government uses RBI to promote growth, job creation. RBI says this is not my primary function. This is my secondary function. My primary function is price stability. Okay. Curtailing or maintaining inflation at a controllable level. It is your duty to bring growth through fiscal policy. Fiscal policy means give tax incentive, promote jobs, industries, etc. Okay. But government says no, it is your responsibility. So that is the tug of war between government and RBI as to who is responsible for the growth and employment. RBI is saying that credit policy is primarily targeted to keep inflation in check. This is RBI's view. And maintain sufficient liquidity in the system which will spur demand. Again back to point number B. The RBI has to maintain a proper balance between price stability and growth. Government is saying that you reduce the interest rate to RBI, forcing the RBI to reduce the interest rate, make more funds available in the banking system. But then RBI is saying that it may result into high inflation. So we are not going to do that. But government says no, we are the boss. We have to do it. So they have to come out with some kind of solution which is acceptable to both the parties. So a properly designed credit policy will lead to economic growth. What was the first objective? Price stability. Second, growth. Third, exchange rate stability. What is exchange rate stability? Foreign exchange rate should not be very volatile. Otherwise it will affect our imports, exports, and if your imports and exports are affected, your production, employment, and again economic growth will be affected. Okay. So one of the task of RBI, again it's a very tightrope walk. You have to maintain a balance that on one hand importers also benefit, because if exchange rate becomes too high, imports will become expensive. If the exchange rate becomes too low also, who will suffer? Exporter will suffer. If you sell goods of $1 lakh and get only 50 rupees per dollar, you'll get 50 lakh. But if you get 70 rupees per dollar, you'll get 70 lakh for the same export. So that is why in India, RBI watches the exchange rate from a distance, and as long as it is within a acceptable range, it does not do any interference. Haji. Dollar rate is 70 or 72 rupees. Very good. Because RBI think that this is right. Capital expenditure has become expensive. Technology has become expensive. But RBI has to take a long-term view. They cannot interfere on a day-to-day basis also, because India has moved to flexible exchange rate system where primarily the market will decide the exchange rate. But at the same time, they are not allowing it to fluctuate too much. Is it right? But what is right rate, we don't know. RBI think it is right. So it is not right now the time to intervene in the market. Is it right? Because too much of tampering with the exchange rate on a frequent basis, then we are not following the flexible exchange rate system, and then again and again people will pressurize RBI for changing the exchange rate. We are now moving towards a flexible system. Let the market decide. If you are a businessman, you have to consider this as a part of your decision making. Okay. But remember, they are still trying to ensure it does not become too volatile that they can't handle it. So for them, this is okay. At least the exporters are also benefiting in this process. Do you know that? So more and more export will take place. It is believed that the growth rate in GDP can be brought by promoting the exports. Export-led growth instead of jobless growth. Because export sector generate lot of employment opportunity also. Like Indian handicrafts are sold outside India. Indian leather products are sold. Okay, tea, coffee are exported. So many things. So because that generate exports, maybe the government, even the garments is a big export industry. Gems and jewelry is a big export industry which requires a lot of employment also. So the idea is that the exports is given more priority in the present scheme of things. They also want to tell the world that our share in the global export has been increasing up. Is it right? So that is the objective. Now these are the debatable issues. What is the right exchange rate? Even the RBI governors are having different views. If you listen to the interview of Raghuram Rajan, he has a different view. If you listen to Manmohan Singh interview or Urjit Patel or some previous governor, they are coming out with different views on the same issues also. So even RBI governors present and past have different opinions on the similar situations, right? So this will always be a debatable issue, but our point is that as a student we have to balance our answer, okay? And if you become RBI governor, you will also have to balance all these issues. Next is external balance of payment equilibrium. What is the meaning of external balance of payment? You are a student of accounts and math. It simply means difference between value of exports and imports. That is called balance of payment in simple term. Balance of payment, how much what we export and how much we import. If imports are more than export, then it is a called deficit, trade deficit. The technical name for that is trade deficit, and then somehow you have to finance that trade deficit. If exports are more than import, it is trade surplus. So what is your knowledge about this? Does India have trade deficit or trade surplus? To my knowledge, it has always been a trade deficit economy because we import much more than what we export. So again, RBI through proper policies can maintain balance of payment equilibrium. Okay. The balance of payment is basically economic transaction of the resident of a country with the rest of the world during a given period of time. So it is the transaction between what we export and what we import during a period. When we add up all the demand for foreign currency, means import, and all the sources from which it comes, means export, these two amounts are necessarily equal. Why necessarily equal? Because if there is a deficit, then you have to borrow money, okay, or you have to arrange for that deficit. So accounting wise, you can equalize it by filling the deficit portion, but practically there is always a difference, and that is called trade deficit. And thus the overall account of balance payment necessarily balance or must always be in equilibrium. If there is a deficit, then somehow you have to work out how to fill that deficit. So that is why India borrows money from IMF, World Bank, etc., etc. Fourth, how many objective we have seen? I'll revise: price stability, economic growth, exchange rate stability, balance of payment, equilibrium. Easy. Does it remind you of your happy lucky 12th standard economics classes? And even in, I think, foundation courses it is there. Macroeconomics. Okay. I had never thought in my life that I have to teach economics also. But it is interesting. I like RBI. Huh? You also like. Good. Point number 5. Adequate flow of credit to productive sector. Adequate flow of credit to productive sector means making loan available to productive sector. Here RBI can play an important role. Like it can advise the banks to give loan to priority sectors like agriculture sector, SMEs, export sector. RBI can reduce the rate of interest at which bank can borrow, and therefore the cost of funding for bank will also become lower, and bank can also pass on that loan to the productive sector at a low rate of interest. They will borrow money, they will produce more. RBI can reduce CRR, SLR, and therefore more funds will be available with the banking sector, and this can be regularly, easily, smoothly be made available to the needy sector. In fact, they give lot of guidance or direction to the banks that you have to give some portion of loan to certain sectors also at a low rate of interest. Once the industry receives funds, once the businessman receives funds, they will use that money for production. More production means more employment opportunity, more people would be hired, and thus the overall standard of living of the people will improve. So this is the objective of RBI. Indirectly, what RBI can do, it can improve the overall standard of living of the people. Next is maintaining a moderate structure of interest rate to enhance investment. How can investment in the country increase? When will you buy a refrigerator on EMI? When interest rate is low, easily available, adequate amount is available. So what RBI is doing, or it can do, again it has to take a decision properly. It has to keep the interest rate in such a manner that people borrows money from the bank and use it for productive investment, both the businessman and the consumer. It should not be very low also, because too low means again money supply increases, inflation increases. It should not be too high also. Why? Because if it is too high, then businessman will not borrow. And if he does not borrow, growth will not take place. He will not invest in machineries. Employment opportunities will not be created. So therefore in India, RBI has got a very, very important role in management of the rate of interest. Once the RBI announces some rate of interest, it immediately affects the available interest rate in the market. Bank FD rate may change, bank lending rate may change, commercial paper interest rate will change, certificate of deposit rate, because all rates are aligned now, okay, integrated now. So as the boss changes the rate, all other interest rates in the economy also undergoes a change. So therefore people, on the day monetary policy has to be announced, they are sitting in front of their television channel and just waiting for the RBI to announce the rate of interest. Okay, and immediately the stock market, the bond market reacts after his announcement. So normally you will see in the last few years they have tried to keep it very stable. They don't change it much. Even if they change by just few points, say 25 points, means 0.25%. Okay. The fate of many industries depend on the interest rate policy pursued by the central bank, because many industries are depending to a large extent on borrowed money. Not every industry is equity oriented. For example, let's say you are into a construction industry. You need a lot of funds before you execute the construction project. So therefore you will depend on interest. Or suppose you are an NBFC. What is your business model? Same business model. You borrow money from one party, you lend it to other party. Is it right? At present, lot of NBFCs have come into crisis because RBI has instructed banks not to lend to these NBFCs. Similarly, the rate of interest goes up, NBFC will have to borrow at a higher rate. Then they can't pass on it to the customer at a lower rate of interest. So therefore, the fate of many industries depend on interest rate policy pursued by central bank. They expect that interest rate be reduced so that loans can be available at cheaper rate. One of the demands of the industry, every time you read the newspaper after the monetary policy, they will say the governor should have reduced the interest rate by at least 50 basis points. Some or the other industrialist will come out with this kind of quote in the newspaper. We were expecting a more reduction in the interest rate from the governor so that they can borrow more. It cost them a lot. Some of them have borrowed 20,000 crore, 40,000 crore rupees money. 1% or 2% also makes a lot of impact on their P&L account. On the other hand, in the case of inflation, the general perception is to increase the rate of interest. If RBI thinks that there is too much of money supply and causing inflation, what do? They will increase the interest rate. So this will reduce the borrowing capacity of the industries. If they borrow less, they will invest less into productive machines, and therefore demand will go down, inflation will go down. Okay. Whether these policies actually work or not in India is again a debatable issue. Okay. Why? Because India is a black economy. So even though RBI does anything, we will be affected only if we have to go to the bank. We already have so much money in our home, many of them, not me. So why are you looking at me with suspicion? So a lot of people have got so much money that even without bank they can do the business. Okay. So therefore it is always believed that many times these policies actually don't have the desired impact. But don't write that answer. That is just a thinking. But as a student we have to write what is written here. Okay. Practically many of these policies do not have the desired effect, because so much of black money is there in the country that actually don't bother to borrow from the bank. Right? A builder uses, let's say, 60% of cash money and only 40% is the white money that he uses in a construction business. Huh? Yes or no? RBI evaluate the pros and cons of every prospective decision and decide interest rate policy to be pursued. This is really a challenge before the RBI. What interest rate they should fix in the economy? So there is always meeting of RBI board, government representatives, and then continuously sometimes the meeting remains inconclusive also. Yes, from 10 o'clock in the morning till 9 in the evening they are discussing and no conclusion comes out also. Then they again call for the next meeting. It is such an important financial variable that they have to discuss and then decide. That is why it is written RBI has to evaluate each pros and cons before they take the decision. RBI has to trade on a cautious path. People expect that inflation should be contained. As a general public, what is your expectation? Inflation should be high or low? Petrol price should be 90 rupees or 60 rupees? 60, 50. And stay within a reasonable limit so that goods and services are available to them in a cheaper manner. At the same time, the people also expect in a contradictory manner. Unemployment should be reduced and more jobs should be available. And you are the RBI governor. What will you do? You are thinking, if I increase the interest rate, inflation will be contained. First expectation I can meet. But then second expectation I will not be able to meet. Because then businessmen will not borrow money, not invest, employment will not be generated. If you go for second expectation, reduce the interest rate, it may lead to inflation. Already India is a high inflation country. further inflation may not be acceptable. Okay, it may result into change of the government in the election because of inflation. It is such a important issue in the election. Okay, people may commit suicides also if they are not able to afford. So therefore, the last point, a trade-off is required between controlling inflation and rising unemployment. This can be a question also. Write a note on trade-off between controlling inflation and rising unemployment. So then you have to write properly. That RBI is in a dilemma. RBI has to think before taking any decision because it affects two key variables in the economy in opposite manner, inflation and unemployment, and both objectives cannot be achieved simultaneously. So therefore there has to be a proper trade-off between the two. Okay, now next paragraph, what RBI does. What RBI does to implement its credit policy. What RBI does to bring price stability and say lower inflation, growth, etc. So that is called analytics of credit policy. Underline or in bracket, right? Analytics means mechanism, process, how to implement or bring desired effect using credit policy. How to bring desired effect using credit policy. So they have given one term in your study material, analytics of credit policy. In some economics books also they have used this term. So we are going to discuss four mechanisms, okay, four systems, four processes through which the RBI implements, executes, brings about some desired change in the economic policy or credit policy. What are these? One is called interest rate channel. Already we have discussed a little bit of it. Exchange rate channel, that is by influencing the exchange rate. Quantum channel, which is related to money supply and credit, and credit channel. These four analytics of credit policy we will cover now one by one. So what do you mean by analytics of credit policy? So that you underline, these are mechanisms through which monetary policy influences the price level and the national income. Okay, these are the means through which RBI influences price level and national income. National income is basically GDP, gross domestic product, which indicates the growth of the economy. Our government says this year our GDP growth rate is 7.6%, 9%. So that shows that this year our growth compared to previous year is 9% more. Okay. So what are the four analytics mechanism or process of credit policy? One is called interest rate channel. And this is really important because you are a CA student. So you should also know how does interest rate affect the businessman. Not just from economics point of view, but also from finance point of view. What if the interest rate goes up? Cost of capital. Have you heard this word, cost of capital? That is a cost of raising finance by a businessman. Is cost of capital. RBI will charge more interest to the bank. Bank will charge more interest to the customer. Ultimately, bank has to make profit. It has to pay interest to RBI at 6.7% right now. So it will charge you more than 6.7%. If RBI increases it to 7%, it will charge you more than 7%. So for the businessman, the cost of capital increases. Okay. And if the cost of capital increases, how will it affect the business? Either he will have to bear the losses. Second option, don't borrow. If he doesn't borrow, he will not invest in capital asset. Don't repay. That is also one option. Oh. Now it is not easy. They will keep your passport. Earlier you could go away, but now the moment you default, once you are classified as NPA, private jet, you can't go. That also requires passport. Yes, who said that? You are not a Superman. That happens in movie, but even if it is a private jet, you have to go to other country and then you need a passport. Anyway, we will come back to the topic. Don't divert and don't give such opinions, at least in the classroom. Huh? Businessmen will reduce the expenditure, and therefore it will reduce on you can say growth, employment. Okay. What about normal consumers like you, like me, general public facing the heat of high interest rate, cut back their purchases of homes, cars, AC, and other goods. In fact, now interest rate has a huge impact on the sale of these kind of goods. Okay. In last many years, you have read in the newspaper, one of the fastest growing sectors in Indian economy is consumer finance sector, and that too the housing and cars and automobile sector, because interest rate is reduced on housing loan. That is why people can now think of buying a house by borrowing funds. Is it right? What if the interest rate goes up? His EMI will go up, but his salary is fixed. Will your boss give you more stipend because interest rate has increased? Or will the employer give more salary because interest rate has increased? No. It will affect the family budget of the household. Because when a person borrows, what he does a mathematics. This is what I am going to earn income. Out of this will go in EMI, this will go in food, clothing, shelter, others. But if this portion goes up, this loan portion, then he will have to cut down on some other necessities. So he will not borrow. So if he does not borrow, means housing sector will affected. Housing sector generates lot of job opportunities. Automobile sector generates lot of opportunities. Demand for cars will come down. Recently in the newspaper I have read, this year the sale of cars have reduced. One reason is rising petrol price, other is rising interest rates also. Okay. That means the production of cars have gone down, means you can imagine it will affect the growth and employment situation in the country. A decline in aggregate demand results in decline in output and goods. These are the negative effect of high interest rate. But you see, there is a positive effect of low interest rate also. Question in the exam will be, how low interest rate will affect the price level and national income? So if you reduce the interest rate, it will have opposite effect. Opposite effect means your cost of capital will reduce, you'll borrow more, invest more, more production, more output. Individuals and households will also spend on housing, car, AC, mobile, TV, refrigerator. Demand for such products will go up, and therefore there will be increase in national income. But at the same time, if the too much money chases too few goods, it might affect the inflation. So there will be an advantage and disadvantage. There will be an advantage and disadvantage. High interest rate, price level low, but national income will also go down. Low interest rate, price level will rise, but advantage is national income will also rise. Okay. Next is exchange rate channel. RBI can influence exchange rate also. By pumping in more foreign exchange in the economy or withdrawing foreign exchange from the economy? Yes or no? In your SFM batch, you may have seen this diagram. I am going to just revise SFM today. Exchange rate is determined by demand and supply of foreign exchange. This is called demand curve, this is supply curve. What RBI can do, it can pump in more foreign exchange in the market. It has got so much of foreign exchange reserve, it can increase the supply of foreign exchange. So this supply curve will move on the right direction. Is it right? So earlier exchange rate was this rate. Let us put some number for understanding, 75. And now it will become 70. They can also do reverse. They can increase the demand. So demand curve, suppose they increase. So now what will happen? The exchange rate may become 78. Through the policies, they can impact the exchange rate by increasing it or decreasing it. Now, how does it affect my exports and imports? If exchange rate goes up, tell me, I have told you in SFM batch, who will benefit? If exchange rate, exporter will benefit, importer will suffer. But if exchange rate depreciates or home currency appreciates, home currency appreciate means dollar depreciate, foreign currency depreciate, importer will be benefited. But who will suffer? Exporter. Domestic goods will become more expensive compared to foreign produced goods. So earlier, if you buy one mobile phone, when exchange rate is say 70 rupees, you have to pay 70,000 rupees for that mobile phone. Now theoretically, suppose it becomes 60, you have to pay 60,000. So you will say it is now cheaper to buy this imported mobile compared to domestic one. And for the foreigners, our product will become expensive. For the foreigners, our product will become expensive because we have to increase the rate in dollar to compensate for the appreciation in domestic currency. To get the same value in rupees, I have to increase the invoice value in dollar. Am I right? If I want 70,000 rupees only, but if exchange rate has gone down to 60, to get 70,000 divided by 60, I have to increase the dollar value of that product. It will make it expensive. So on one hand, our exports will suffer, imports will increase. So domestic industry will suffer. Yes or no? Domestic industry will suffer. So that is the impact of appreciation of domestic currency. It will make domestic products more expensive compared to foreign product goods. Imports will become cheaper. You are a consumer, okay? You are a customer. Nowadays, that feeling of nationalism and patriotism has gone away. Is it still there? Do you still say मंदिर वहीं बनाएंगे, राम जन्मभूमि पे? Are you interested in that? Tell me, you are the youth of this country. Do you really care where will you have mandir, masjid? Do you really care where should I buy the product? Oh, it is getting recorded. Do you really care? Tell me. You are a CA student, final student. Do you really care about such issues? But do you as a customer care? If I sell you one mobile phone at 60,000, same mobile phone Indian made 70,000, what will you do? No, majority of the people think like that. Only some people still are in the ancient ages, okay? My question to this batch of highly knowledgeable final student, do you really care about where I am buying from? Whoever gives you same product at a lower price, I'll buy from there. Is it right? Even if Pakistani fellow gives me a lower price, I'll buy from there also. Because it is my money. I have to make the best use of it. Is it right? Same thing is appearing on the screen. If exchange rate decreases, home currency appreciates, customer, if it is possible, though no restriction, he will buy the foreign made good only because that is cheaper. Otherwise, you are just harming yourself only by buying a domestic expensive product. When it hits your pocket, that time there is no patriotism. Okay, remember. When it hits others' pocket, that time you will give lot of knowledge. This will cause the net exports to fall because expensive goods produced in India will have to be sold at a higher price and it will find few takers outside India. Now, in the exam, you have to be ready for such question. How does appreciation in home currency affects our exports and imports? How does depreciation or of foreign currency or appreciation of home currency can impact our net exports? So you have to say exports will fall, imports will rise. Exports will become expensive, imports will become cheaper. So effectively your balance of payment will have a higher trade deficit. Consequently, domestic output and employment will also fall. So this was about exchange rate channel, how exchange rate channel can affect the employment, stability in price, etc. Reverse will also happen. Suppose domestic currency depreciate, reverse will happen. Exports will become cheaper, imports will become expensive. So your overall output, employment, production will go up, right? So that is why your query, why Indian government is allowing the rupee to depreciate, because we want to promote exports and reduce import. In fact, it is good because some economists believe that if we keep the exchange rate low, we will import more oil. Yes or no? Because 80 to 90% of our oil is imported. And if we borrow oil at a lower rate, we'll consume it also more. So it will increase further pollution in the country. So let the exchange rate be high, let the petrol price be high, so that people will consume or use less vehicle, okay, and they will use more of public transport. So indirectly so much linkage is there. This also article I read in the newspaper, not my idea, that let the exchange rate be little on a higher side only, so that we don't import too much of petrol, or at least that will be expensive. Paragraph 3. Topic is right now analytics of credit policy. Quantum channel relating to money supply and credit. Now here we will discuss two channels. The banking, lending or credit channel, that is how the banks make funds available, and balance sheet channel means valuation of assets and liabilities can be affected because of your monetary or credit policy. Okay, so let us see. You are a student of account, you will understand both better. Teaching at CA final is very easy because students have knowledge of finance also. Teaching same topics at intermediate or foundation level is really difficult. Although the teachers teach, but then understanding the implication, feeling the implication is not at foundation level. There the student just by heart few lines. If this goes up, this goes down. That's it. But you are able to feel that thing right now. How such policy decisions affect our economy. What is credit channel? It means making the funds available. Interest rate channel was cost of borrowing. Credit channel means amount of borrowing availability. Understand the difference between this point 1 interest rate channel and credit channel. There it is the rate at which the funds are made available. Here it is the amount of funds which are made available. So what RBI can do to make more funds available or less funds available? RBI has got certain tools, like for example, open market operation, which I am going to explain later. Through open market operation, what they do, if they sell government security, banks lending power decreases. If they purchase government security from the bank gets more money. If they reduce CRR, bank's lending capacity goes up because bank have more funds. They don't have to keep with RBI. If they reduce SLR, they have more funds available for lending. Vice versa also. If they increase CRR, less funds are available for lending. If they increase SLR, less funds are available for lending. Okay. So through this credit channel, RBI can affect the availability of funds with the banks to lend to the business sector. Okay. So most of the business organization depend on bank loan for their borrowing needs. To restrict the flow of credit in times of inflation, now see here the RBI wants to reduce the money supply. Question I am expecting which they should ask, how can RBI reduce money supply? So one is you increase the interest rate, which we have seen. Second is, this is called open market operation. Have you heard this in your economics? Open market operation means you sell government security to the banks. Tell the banks, see, we are coming out with this government security sale and you have to buy. Okay. So how the accounting will happen? Bank will receive government security and bank will give money to RBI. So what you have done? You have removed their liquidity. Reverse will happen if they want to increase the liquidity. They will purchase the bond and RBI will give them money. So this makes the firms which are dependent on bank loans to cut back on their spending on investment. And of course, everything you have to write 2 times. What if RBI does reverse? It will make more funds available, more investment will take place. So a tight monetary policy like this will reduce the output and employment, following a reduction in money supply. And then reverse in case it follows liberal credit policy. So you just write one line. The reverse will happen, or reverse happens, when RBI purchases government security from commercial banks. Okay, written. Next channel you write down or tick mark, balance sheet channel. Now you are a student of finance, you'll understand this better. Otherwise it was very difficult to explain to intermediate student this paragraph. It is there in intermediate also, economics for finance, and one chapter is there, monetary policy. The direct effect of monetary policy on the balance sheet is that it will show the interest cost and increase in payment through the loan repayment. Now, if suppose a company has borrowed money at a floating rate of interest, have you heard floating rate of interest? Say yes. Interest rate is linked to a standard rate, generally bank rate, treasury bill rate, okay, repo rate. RBI rate, something like that. If that goes up, more interest will be paid, more EMI will have to be paid. Yes or no? So it will affect the P&L account and balance sheet of the companies. Higher interest rate will affect both P&L account and balance sheet of the company. In the balance sheet, the valuation of their assets and liabilities will change. Valuation of assets and liabilities will change. Yes or no? You have studied bond valuation. Higher the discount rate, lower the present value. Bond valuation chapter. And in accounting standard 28, impairment of asset, recoverable value of a fixed asset is present value of future cash flow, that is called value in use. So if the interest rate increases, value in use will decrease. Are you understanding? And value in use will decrease means you will have to provide for impairment of asset. So point number B, which nobody will explain to you, but only you have to understand because you are a student of SFM and accounts. An indirect effect is that the same increase in interest rate works to reduce the capitalized value of the firm's fixed asset. Now here I have kept some space blank in your note. Why? So you have to write one note which I have written. Higher the discount rate, lower the present value. Okay. Possibly company's fixed asset might be impaired because the value in use will go down. Value in use will go down. See, value in use is calculated like this. If you want to write this now, write, otherwise don't write. Year 1, 2, 3, 4. Cash flow, present value. Now only understand, if I use a higher discount rate for calculating present value, you are a student of finance, many of you have passed also group 1. What will happen to present value? Decrease. S28 will come into picture. S28 says if your recoverable amount is below the carrying amount, you have to reduce the carrying amount to its recoverable amount. So value of your asset will reduce. An indirect effect is that the same increase in interest rate works to reduce the capitalized value of the firm's fixed asset. So some company might have to write down their fixed asset. This will decrease their net worth. This will decrease their net worth. One more line, right? It will decrease their net worth. And what if it decreases their net worth? Further borrowing capacity will decrease. Am I right? I will not write, just listen to me and write. Further borrowing capacity will decrease. If you go to bank to take loan, bank looks at first how much is your own net worth, 5 crore. They will give you 2 crore rupees loan. But if your net worth is 3 crore, then they will reduce it to 1.2 crore, 1.4 crore only. So I have connected accounting standard 28 with this chapter. Okay. But in the module they will not explain how does change in interest rate affects the firm's fixed asset value. Only students like you who have understood impairment chapter can understand this paragraph. Point number next in your book, it is written C in your book. This will also raise the company's cost of capital and consequently precipitate reduction in production and output. This line is repeated everywhere. Higher the interest rate, higher is the cost of capital, lower borrowing, less production, less output, more unemployment. Next channel is called asset price channel. Now see, let us say you are an investor, okay? You are an investor you have invested in bonds of 100 crore rupees. This is just an example, because say for example State Bank of India has invested in bonds of 1 lakh crore rupees. LIC has invested in bonds of 6 to 8 lakh crores of rupees. In Reliance balance sheet also there is approximately some 80-90,000 crore rupees of investment in debt securities. Now simple question, what if RBI increases the interest rate? Interest rate increases, value of bonds decreases. So the value of your asset goes down. Okay. So these are some indirect effect on businesses. Suppose you want to securitize this asset next year, you will get lower funds. What is written in the book is important, but you have to read between the lines. The standard asset price channel indicate the change in credit policy affect output, inflation and employment. An increase in interest rate in debt securities makes them more attractive to investor than equity. Now understand this line. First point I explained, it reduces the value of bond. So the moment the value of the bond reduces or the bond gives more interest to the investor, there will be a shift in the investment pattern. Investor will shift from equity to bond market. And this line is very important for understanding, because in India many times the stock market falls the moment RBI increases the interest rate or the US Federal Reserve increases the interest rate. Tell me why US Federal Reserve interest rate hike affects Indian stock market? Because this foreign institutional investor, they remove money from India and they invest in the securities of US government there, because that gives them more interest and that is more secure. Is it right? This leads to a fall in share prices. Equity investors are also affected because of change in interest rate. High interest rate will result into fall in equity price, because investor will sell equity share and buy bond. So the selling pressure on equity goes up. So those investors who are holding equity share, their value of equity share comes down. This leads, and if the value of their shares come down, what will happen? They will invest, they will consume less. Am I right? If I have got wealth of 1 crore rupees, I'll accordingly spend money. But due to share price crash, now it is only 70 lakh rupees now. So I will curtail my consumption because my wealth has got eroded. If I curtail my consumption, the producer will curtail his production. Production depends on consumption. No? What will you produce? What can be consumed? If you can't, there is no consumer, I will not produce. And if the producer does not produce, it will affect the employment. This may affect the overall financial wealth of the investor. So remember, this interest rate or credit policy of RBI can have the impact on the assets or wealth of the customer. And if the asset or wealth of the customer or consumer or investor is affected, it affects indirectly the employment production in the economy also. Of course, here we have discussed what will happen if interest rate increases. Reverse will happen if the interest rate decreases. So you please write one more line. Only don't write negative part. Write positive things also. Reverse will happen when interest rate decreases. People will shift from bond to equity. Value of equity will rise. Wealth of the investor would rise. They will spend more on consumption, more production, more output, more employment, more growth. Okay. In economics, these variables are related. More consumption, more production, more output, more employment, higher growth. Is it right? And I'm going to repeat this again and again in this chapter. So this completes my 4 analytics of credit policy. Let us revise the headings. First one was interest rate channel, second is exchange rate channel, third is quantum channel. There we have covered 2, credit channel and balance sheet channel, and then fourth one is just now asset price channel. Now next is operating procedure and instrument. Operating procedure means what action the RBI takes to bring about price stability, growth, employment, and then what instrument do they use. Okay, so this is one of the main portions of this chapter where we are going to discuss now CRR, SLR, and such things, open market operation, repo, reverse repo. So the operating procedure and instrument. Operating framework of monetary policy refers to how the various aspects of monetary policies are implemented. Suppose my objective is to become a merit holder in CA final exam. Okay, so what will I do? I will have some operating procedure to achieve that objective. So in this paragraph, we are going to discuss the operating procedure which will help us to achieve the goals of monetary policy. So first is, in your book, point 1, choose the operating target. Choose the operating target. What you want to achieve. Write in bracket what you want to achieve. What RBI wants to achieve. Example, they want to reduce the inflation. I have written in bracket, for example, inflation. Unless your target, goal, objective is not clear, how will you decide the instrument? So what do? First, they decide the operating target, which in our example, they want to keep the inflation to a certain level. The operating target to the variable that monetary policy can influence with its action. Then choose the intermediate target, what you can achieve with a reasonable degree of success. Okay, that is called intermediary target. For example, economic stability is a variable which central bank can hope to influence to a reasonable degree. And then third one, you can guess, you have to choose the right policy instrument. Set the target, choose the intermediary target, and then you decide the right monetary policy instrument, which is the next part of this chapter, which are the instruments they use. Okay, example would be CRR, SLR, repo rate. So credit policy instrument are the various tools that a central bank can use to influence money market and credit condition and pursue its monetary policy objective. So the day-to-day implementation of monetary policy by central bank through various instruments is referred to as operating procedure. Underline. So in the exam, the question will be fill in the blanks. There is a fill in the blank. Sentence given in the exam is the day-to-day implementation of monetary policy by central bank through various instruments is referred to as. Then you have to write their operating procedure. Don't write interest rate channel. Don't write repo rate, or they might give you this as a 1 mark objective type. This will be missing from the question and 4 options would be given. One of them would be operating procedure. Each line is important. In the model test paper and exam paper, I have seen they have converted a sentence in the module into a question. Like this can be a fill in the blank question. This can be a multiple choice question. This can be a true false question also. This statement they will write and true or false. So you will say true. But if they write something else, then it is false. Now we'll continue tomorrow, where we are going to discuss the instruments of credit policy. Okay, so this is little lengthy part, and I'm going to discuss some MCQs also.